everybody, welcome to this edition of 2Scoop News, where you're going to get your 2 scoops of your daily news. Now, I'm Samuel Appiah.
And I'm Shane Manhurts.
Thanks again. So today's story is South Africans massacre immigrants. Shay, why don't you give us the breakdown of the story?
Yeah, it says here 6 people were killed this week as xenophobic attacks against immigrants rage on in South Africa. The local citizens have accused immigrants of taking their jobs, undermining their businesses, and contributing to a high crime rate. The rate of unemployment in South Africa is about 25%, according to government figures. President Jacob Zuma has said that his government is addressing these issues. He says, quote, "While some foreign nationals have been arrested for various crimes, it is misleading and wrong to label or regard all foreign nationals as being involved in crime in the country." He also said that immigrants contribute to the nation's economy and should not be stereotyped as criminals. While this has not been the first instance of xenophobic attacks in the country, this is just the latest in a series of attacks that date back years. So what's the cause of this week's attack? Well, they started after Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini said at a recent gathering that foreigners should, and I quote, "pack their bags and go," because they were taking jobs from citizens. Shortly after his comments, violence broke out against immigrants in the city of Durban. That's powerful. South Africa, after being recently emancipated from apartheid, what do you think?
Well, my thoughts exactly. I feel as if that South Africa, you kind of expect better of South Africa just because of what they've recently been through. It hasn't been that long ago, with just recently, I think it was in the 90s that they were freed from that apartheid situation. However, when I really look at it, right, a lot of the immigrants that they're targeting is fellow Africans.
That's right.
You look at these people, they look almost the same, they have similar, features as yourself, as well as similar culture, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And this is something where I find it difficult for them to be targeting fellow Africans for or lack of job opportunity, when there are whites who are still in South Africa who have majority of the resources. Not that I'm inciting violence, but you can see that there's something wrong right there with the thinking.
Right.
And is it just like, is it that they're using the immigrants as scapegoats, and has this been something that's been prevalent even in the past?
That's exactly right. We see these things happening in the past for sure. Like, say for instance with Rome, like back in those days, the Romans had these pagan gods, and as Christians, the Christians did not worship these gods because they only believe in one God. And so when things would go wrong, the economy would go bad or whatever, the Romans would blame the Christians because the Christians were not paying homage to their gods, and they would incite their violence against them. Also in Nazi Germany, the Jews were also being accused of taking the Germans' positions, their jobs, and in the banking especially. And so they were oppressed as well. And so we see these things happening throughout history for sure.
And I think it's important to notice that this is a historical trend because, in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 9, it says, "The thing that has been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is nothing new under the sun." So one has to ask yourself, how does the past events and the present events that are going on with all the chaos that's going on in the world right now, what relation does that have to us today and our future?
It's happening right now, especially the world is ending right now. Basically, we're on the verge of the coming of Christ. And so Christ said that these things would happen, violence against other people, nation rising against nation. And it says here in Matthew chapter 10, verse 34, Christ speaking, he says, "Do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against his mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's enemies will be those of his own household." So what's happening now is people, because of their religious beliefs or because of certain things that they believe in, they're being called now to become separate. Because Christ is getting ready to seal his people. He's getting ready to put his mark on his people to separate them from the others who do not believe in the gospel, or they don't believe in the truth. And so what's happening now is families are being separated. It's hard right now. Things are getting very tense right now, especially in the other parts of the world. And so we have to be aware of that.
And when you talk about that, you know, the person, when it says that your own enemy will come from with your own household, that's something that's very tough. Now, however, is this something that is a new principle? As we're talking about history repeating itself, right? And what role that's going to play in the coming or the fulfillment of prophecy. Now, you were talking about how Catholicism, right? How at one point in time, they were actually persecuting Bible-believing Christians. And so here we have supposed or so-called Christians persecuting Christians. And the reason why we're bringing this up is because we have this situation in South Africa where Africans are persecuting other Africans on account of what? Loss of job opportunity?
There's a lack of God in the world, especially what's happening here. There's a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. And I think an outlet is just to take it on, to put it on other people. And so what's happening now is people are just, because there's no love. Love is gone. You know, there's very little love in the world now. And so it's just violence and just all these things are happening. And so we exhort you, our viewers, take heed, you know, stick close to Christ. Come out of her, my people, Christ says. Come out of Babylon, because Babylon is about to fall. And if we move out and we gather together and we humble ourselves before the Most High and we get into that relationship, we will be able to stand in the last days.
Amen to that. Especially come out of, God is saying, listen, come out, my people, lest you receive her plagues. Because when those plagues fall on those who receive the mark of the beast, then what will happen? They're going to target the remnant. They're going to target those who decide not to keep the traditions of men over the traditions of God. Evaluate yourself. Where do you stand today? Are you willing to put aside the traditions of men? Are you willing to love God more than the things of the world? Are you willing to love God more than, you know, those around you? Because the thing is, if you love him and you seek him first, everything else will be added on to you. He makes that direct promise. I exhort you to try him today. I exhort you to search the scriptures for yourself today, because the leadership of these nations, the leadership in many of these vast organizations, whether religious or political, are taking us to a place where it's in direct rebellion against the King of Heaven, that is Jesus Christ. So again, thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining us for this editions of 2Scoop News, and we hope you got your 2 scoops of your daily news. I'm Samuel Appiah.
And I'm Shane Manhertz.
God bless.